Let me just start out by saying thank you for everyone who's here so far. Welcome to Virtual Coffee. It's a weekly thing. This is usually going to be Thursday morning, but we are very lucky to have Mike today, so we're making an exception doing Wednesday. So my name is Ellie, and I am the head of community at Knowledge Graph Conference. We're focused on increasing awareness and adoption around knowledge graph technologies. We think that they're the tool forward to kind of leapfrog into AI and better information management generally. So we do a lot of events around this. We have the big conference, and then as community, I'm sort of trying to plug people into each other and into opportunities a bit more. So if you have ideas, questions, please let me know, and we can work on getting you what you need to know. So today, Mike is going to talk about the almost 20 jobs at Stardog, right? And what it's like to work there. So tell us about that.
Well, I guess there's a lot to say there. We're fortunate enough that, despite everything that's been going on around us, we've been able to continue growing, in particular, making a focused effort to expand out, the team here in the second half of the year, which is what gave rise to the proliferation of roles on our site. It's all across the company, from pre-sales, marketing, product marketing, and more in my domain of engineering.
So is there like a broader strategy that you can share, or is it just graphs are hot and there's a lot of room?
Well, there's certainly plenty of opportunity out there. Graphs are definitely hot. We were just talking about the increase in effectively just the word knowledge graph appearing in research publications like Gartner and Forrester. It was already on the hype cycle, but it seems to have kind of been taken up another level, which we're running a business, so that's exciting to see.
So you mentioned, you're a longtime proponent of this technology. And so I think like probably everyone here is certainly not as experienced and probably very curious about it. So, before we dive into Stardog, can you tell us a little bit about knowledge graphs from the expert point of view?
There's a lot I could get into there. I think, the big thing, and I touched on this some in my talk at KGC earlier this year, is the big point about knowledge graphs is the knowledge part. And I think people get excited about the graph part. Graph's been hotter for a heck of a lot longer than knowledge graphs or semantic technology or ontologies or anything else that's kind of come along since. What's it look like? Can I see the nodes and edges? I want to do page rank, which are all good things. But the knowledge is really the key bit. That's what organizations want to leverage. That's what they're trying to divine from the myriad of data sources they have available, from public data, Twitter feeds, everything under the sun. And that's where really what underpins knowledge graphs, the semantic technology, the idea of writing down data such that it's understandable to machine processes, is really what makes that tick, because it's that understanding, that transfer of context that really makes the data more effectively used, especially as we turn things over more and more to machines to help us in decision making, or just to make the decisions for us. The machines we want them to understand the world and understand the terminology in the way that we understand it when we talk about it. Data just isn't sufficient. You actually have to know what that data means and understand it in its place in a use case within the business at large and the world around you.
So that's, so there's two angles that I'd like to ask you about. The first is, how do you do that, right? Like, what's the back end? And then the second is, so obviously we live in a time of overwhelming data. And as you said, there's interest in finding the knowledge. But then there's also this subtext that I'm aware of from the conference mostly, that it's kind of hard to sell the knowledge graph to the enterprise, right? So there's the desire for the outcome, but then the process is a little bit difficult. So so can you speak about that? Like what works to convince people that their knowledge is worth actually investing in to access? And what is that? Where does that go?
So yeah, your second question is how to kind of sell the idea of knowledge graphs to the
Yeah.
enterprise. That's a hard question. That's one we've been asking ourselves for damn near 20 years, since the very early days of this
Successful,
technology.
right? To
Yeah,
some
well, as
extent.
of late we have been, but
Okay.
for a while it was, trying to, we were a bit of field of dreams. You build it and they will come.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think where we have seen the most effectiveness across our customer base, and this is the global 2000, some of the biggest companies in the world, is not talking about just knowledge graphs for knowledge graphs' sake, but just still focusing on solving a business problem.
Which is important for big, expensive tech projects.
Yes.
So, so it sounds like, so obviously we know the questions on the engineering side, and I'm sure there's quite a few people here who have those, how do you do it and all that. And then it sounds like on the other end, because we're talking about all the jobs at Stardog, right? And there are some engineering, but there are also quite a few on the business side. It sounds like that's really about understanding the wide range of use cases that exist in business, and sort of being able to ideate that as you talk with the client sort of as a partnership. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we definitely are looking, to help kind of bring people around. There's some educational or evangelistic aspects if you're kind of on the pointy tip of the spear. But we certainly think about it from a partnership aspect. We're working together to help them solve a problem, and make their business more effective at something that really matters to them, along the way. So understanding their domain and really being able to put yourself in their shoes and help them arrive at the right setup, which hopefully involves Stardog, is paramount for us. And then, that's, in the early stages, we have openings in customer success. So making sure people actually realize what we talked about throughout the sales process is a big key. Everyone likes to talk about being customer focused. We're no different.
Mm-hmm.
So we really think about things in terms of a partnership as a good way for you to frame it.
Great. I think that's helpful too for your customer, right? Like they need a partner, especially in this domain, because it's not straightforward.
And especially since it's new for a lot of folks.
Exactly. Yeah. New and deep. So tell me about, so sell me on Stardog, right? Like, what is it that Stardog does? Because this is very abstract for me at the moment. There's vendors, but what's sort of the difference between, your solution and Cambridge Semantics or Tiger Graph or Neo4j?
It's a good question. Those are all fine pieces of technology. Where I think we are distinct is in how we kind of assemble some of the different parts and pieces. So, obviously graph is central to what we are and how we operate. So, we're based around semantic graphs, which, as opposed to property graph systems, I think is a more effective graph model, particularly for the knowledge part of knowledge graphs. Gives you a nice low code environment. It's a much more, I think, scalable way to build a knowledge layer, depending on whose terminology you like. Could be a data fabric, unified semantic layer, a knowledge graph. It's had many names over the years. So certainly that's key, but where that only kind of gives you the facade or what people build on top of. So I think there's two other capabilities that we bring in that are interesting that help make that more valuable to the organization. One is our inference engine. And so that's really being able to codify what those relationships mean, because it's not an edge, it's a relationship, and that relationship has profound meaning to the business, and capturing that effectively. We've seen this a lot recently with data catalogs and data dictionaries and glossaries, and there's a whole lot of metadata management initiatives in that vein that attempt to write it down for humans. But being able to write it down, with these semantic graphs and then have an inference engine to leverage it is actually how you get value out of that that artifact. And then our virtualization. So not only do we have the graph database at the core of the platform, so we can store data. We don't believe that we're going to store all the data. Not all the data is going to be in one place. If nothing else, data lakes have taught us that's not an approach that will necessarily work. Data is going to be distributed. And more often than not, you want to leave data where it is and kind of reach out and kind of do compute on the edge. So our combination of the graph database, the virtualization, to bring together data of different types, moving at different speeds in different formats all across an organization, the logical layer and the inference engine to glue all that together and stitch it with the appropriate meaning. And then it's a scalable kind of data operations or data orchestration layer to deliver that to graph analytics, fraud detection, end user applications, whatever, the actual business requirement is for humans sitting in front of it.